Welcome to The Dental Deal, the podcast for dental professionals exploring a DSO partnership. In each episode of The Dental Deal, the 7 Pillars team will demystify the world of DSOs. Whether you're a dental professional looking to sell your practice and join a DSO, or a young dentist seeking mentorship and career growth, this podcast is for you. In this episode, we will answer the question, how do I know when it's time to partner with a DSO? Each dental professional is different, and their motivations to partner with a DSO are very different too. Today, Brett and Christy will help you get to the bottom of why you really want to partner with a DSO and when it is best to make the move. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to join us for our upcoming episodes. Until then, keep smiling. Over to you, Christy.
Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Christy Ratcliff, and I'm here with Brett Pierce, managing partner of 7 Pillars, and we're here to talk about probably the most common question we get, which is, how do I know that I'm ready to have a DSO transition or to transition in general? So Brett, I know you have this conversation 5+ times a day.
Yep.
So what is your answer when you get asked this question?
It's kind of a two-part answer. It's, should I consider this and should I do it? Those are very different things. Should you consider it? You should always consider it. You should always consider all of your options. So you need to understand, what are your transition options? What is my practice worth in the DSO market today? What is my practice worth in the private market? What are my options for a transition? What are my options for growth? What are my options for all these different things? So considering it, you always need to understand what your options are. You could say, I want to do the same thing I've been doing for the next 10 years, and that's fine. But not understanding what all the options you have available to you are, you're probably a little remiss not to know those things. Whether you should do it or not is a much more involved conversation that requires a lot of discovery on our side. What are you solving for? What am I actually trying to accomplish in this transaction, in this partnership with the DSO? Is it just money? Am I just chasing a check? That's fine. Am I looking for something else? Generally, we like to see the doctors that are looking for something other than just money, other than just that initial check. These are partnerships. And so what are we trying to solve for outside of just money? And it takes a little bit of time to get to that answer. If all you care about is money, then you just work more. Mm-hmm. Like, I have a hard time with a doctor that says, I'm working 2 days a week and all I care about is money. Well, I don't know that that's true, because if all you cared about was money and not time and lifestyle, you'd work 5 days a week or 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure out what that answer is to you. What's your why for doing this? What's your non-financial reason for doing it?
I love that, and I love the consider angle, because how many times have you talked to someone on both sides of the coin and they're not ready to transition, but they say, I will never sell to a DSO, or I will never have a partner, I'll never have an associate. And I think, we've all kind of said never probably once or twice in our life, and are probably doing that same thing. And I think it's hard to know why you would say, why am I not willing to do that? Or even if I'm not willing to do that, and maybe I don't believe in whatever that thing I'm saying, why not get educated about it? Why not understand what the repercussions or what the benefits could be, so that when it's time, which we all know some docs hold on too long and some are great planners, but when it's time, I know which direction to go. So on the flip side of that, right? So that's everyone should have the data, everyone should be educated, everyone should consider it. Why is it so difficult to answer the question kind of in a yes or no when we're talking to someone about, okay, I know what to do. I know I'm open to this, but is this the right time for me? Why is that so hard if we're just, if it's numbers on a paper and an offer price and financially?
Yeah, never, to your point, never's a long time. Mm-hmm. And things change a lot. It's difficult to just give a blanket answer if you're ready for a DSO transition or not, because there are so many moving parts inside of every practice. I tell all of our clients, I'm not for DSO transitions or against them. I'm for the doctor and whatever makes sense for them. And that could be a whole slew of different things. Here's some of the reasons are, okay, I know that I want to move to Hawaii in 6 years. Well, you should probably start thinking about what that looks like and how you get there, and what's the transition succession plan for the practice. Maybe you have 5 associates and they're all asking for ownership, or none of them have asked for ownership yet. I will tell you right now, the more owners inside that practice, the more complicated this transition gets. And so there's some timing there with associates. There's also timing in terms of the financial markets. the values have been very high recently. In the last couple of years, historically high. Is that going to continue in the future? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
But what does it mean for your financial life plan? So like, we love to get financial planners involved, help the financial planners truly understand where this person's life needs to go financially. And so that's a big part of our process. I can find you the best deal in the world, but if it doesn't work for your financial plan or for your life, it doesn't really matter. And I don't know any of those things until we kind of dive in deep past the superficial. What's my multiple? I want to get a bunch of money, and all these things, and that's all fine. And like, that's table stakes for us. We will maximize your value on that transaction. But what other things are driving this interest? Is it just fear of missing out? That's fine. But the more education you have, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and I think the more time, if you're asking yourself, am I ready, or is this the right time for me to do this? The more time that you can spend understanding what you're solving for, the better the transition process, the better the partner selection, the happier you will likely be post-close, right? We hear all these, we talk to clients who say, hey, I've just heard that generally people are unhappy after these corporate deals. And we know from experience that clients are very happy post-deal. And I think that comes from being more educated on the front end and understanding what they're getting into. Like, there's a whole slew of, the legal implications and what their expectations are. But I think the first and the most important reason is, what am I solving for? And does this deal solve for it? What are reasons that people enter into this process, right? They know their why, but what are some reasons and helpful reasons that a DSO might help solve for, or reasons people kind of end up doing a transaction like this versus maybe the more traditional route of the doctor-to-doctor sale? Yeah,
these DSOs are, generally speaking, they're very large businesses, and large businesses generally have a strong back office, do all of the nuts and bolts administrative things that, frankly, a lot of the doctors probably wouldn't have signed up for had they known what they were getting themselves into. So, we run to a lot of doctors that are just tired of kind of running the business.
Yeah.
And these are multi-million-dollar businesses that are being run by the main producer in that business. And that's pretty rare. This industry is unique because of that. When you have the business owner who is also the main producer in the business, there are always going to be some challenges. There's some time constraints. Like, you see patients 8 hours to that day, and then you got to deal with the payroll schedule, and a couple people quit and whatever.
Yeah.
That's somewhat unique to this industry. It's a professional service industry, and so there's always room for kind of administrative improvement there, which means there's also a lot of pressure on the doctors. There's a lot of pressure on these doctors to run multi-million-dollar businesses, kind of by themselves, where the buck stops with them. Hopefully they're making the most, but they're also getting paid last. So the DSOs are going to help. They're all different. When you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. They all have different things. And generally speaking, they're pretty helpful, but they're going to help you with the accounting. They're going to help you with any financial stuff. HR and recruiting are big ones.
Yeah.
There's a lot of risk in HR in kind of today's climate, not just for recruiting, but also for protecting yourselves from kind of doing the wrong things and making sure you're treating everybody fairly. The DSOs are generally very good at that. And like I said, recruiting is a big part of it. And realistically, it's creating a nice succession plan for the business too.
Yeah.
One of the things that we get caught up in is what's my succession plan as a dentist or as an orthodontist or a dental professional? But what's the transition plan of the business, of the practice? There are a lot of people inside that practice that you care about, that we all care about, that helped you build that business. Who's going to be a good steward of that business and those people and those patients moving forward? And we always kind of say these things 10 years from now, you need to be proud of what you're driving by your practice.
Yep.
And what does that look like? We don't really have a crystal ball what that's going to look like, but I can promise you right now, no matter how much money you get, if 6 years from now you drive by that practice and you're embarrassed to drive by it and you don't want to be in that community that you've grown to love and have loved you, you're going to regret it. So going in with eyes wide open, to your point before, is super critical. What are all of the possible risks, all the possible rewards of this partnership, and who gives me the best chance for success now and in the future? So that's kind of where we focus a lot of our time, and that's where when we figure out I want this practice to have a great succession plan. I want myself to have a great succession plan, and the timing is right for a variety of reasons, whether it's associates or staff, or I want to move to Hawaii or whatever and own a surf shop or whatever it is. Those are all reasons that we hear. But we have to chip away and dig away, and no one really tells me those things in the first 5 minutes.
No one's opening their soul in the first 5 minutes of conversation. I think what I've heard from some of my, our clients that have kind of come through is they are still there day to day, right? So when we say that DSOs come in and they have a great back office, they're not there doing everything for you. They do take a lot of that off your plate, but you're still in the office. You're still helping, right? You're still the person people are coming to. But I think what a lot of our clients have experienced is they've been the only person, like the buck has stopped with them. And to have, a team surrounding you that you can kind of say, hey, I don't know what I want to do, kind of, what do you think? Or can you help me recruit this associate? Or what is the best way to do this? Or you also now have a network of doctors who you're not in competition with. It's a very, dentistry is a very lonely island in the private practice ownership world. And so what we hear a lot of our clients say is it's just so nice to have a network of doctors as well as the support staff that you can kind of call on for advice and opinions. When we talk about the transition plan, and a lot of our clients will enter into this process because they don't have a transition plan, or the transition plans that exist to them they don't like.
Yeah.
And so this allows them to kind of relieve themselves of some ownership and have an exit strategy while still being able to continue to practice for the next 5 or 6 years, I think, without the weight of how am I going to exit hanging over their head. And I think that's a big relief for clients.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I think you're right. It's a very siloed profession. If you own a restaurant, you're going to 10, 20, 30, 50 restaurants a year, and you're seeing how other people do it. Generally, our doctors aren't touring other offices a whole lot, nor are they getting constructive feedback from peers on how to do things. There are study clubs, and there are, and those are great, and there are different ways for doctors to communicate with each other. But at the end of the day, everybody still has their own business and their own. And you care about your own stuff. You care about your own stuff more. And so, the siloedness is one of the things that comes up a lot post transaction. Doctors are like, man, I didn't even realize how alone I was, and I didn't realize how much I appreciate the support system that I have now.
Yep.
I mean, it's not all rainbows and fairy tales, but it's a really nice place to be. Like, I just had a really nice transaction. I have a lot of equity and a really good partner moving forward. And by the way, when I have an HR problem, I call the HR person. Or when I have an accounting issue, like I call the accounting people. I don't have to just call myself and ask myself what
do you
I'm
think
supposed
you
to
would do for this?
Now I finally don't have a dentist running my business.
Yeah.
I have a business people. So, but again, if a doctor has the idea that I'm going to partner with the DSO and I'm just going to put my feet up and not have to do anything, it's not really right.
False reality.
It's not a magic wand saying we're just going to come in and take over and you don't have to do anything. You're still going to be the leader of the practice.
Yep.
Which is what the patients want and which is what your staff wants. You're still going to be responsible for the day-to-day operations. You just have a security mode. You have a bat phone to call, and you have a really heavy support system that is actually financially interested in your practice succeeding as well. So if you get the right partner and you go in with your eyes wide open and you understand like what they're going to provide and what they aren't going to provide, you're generally going to be happy with the result.
So what about this is something that I think is important, and people are kind of sometimes surprised about our process. So, our process is clearly, like you said, without question, number one priority is, I shouldn't say number one, but number one given in our process is that we're going to negotiate and maximize the financial value for you.
Absolutely.
But what is sometimes given more time on the front end is understanding, the what are you solving for, but then also the introduction to these buyers and these partners and making sure that you understand what they represent and how they're going to help you. Why is that so important to someone who is, entering this process and is just starting?
Yeah, it's a huge difference in our process. If you just want someone to finagle a P&L a little bit and send it out to a bunch of people and then just pick the highest number and they're not going to care about you, your future, or whatever, just get the biggest number, we're not going to do that.
No.
We're not going to do that. There's so much more to this. This is a value proposition for us. There's 7 value pillars. We can get into that later, but this is all about all the different pieces of the puzzle. We will absolutely maximize the financial value of that initial transaction. That is table stakes. We have tons of data points. We have all the relationships, and we are really good at creating win-win partnerships with the DSOs. In these partnerships, one side can't win over the other, otherwise the partnership isn't equal and isn't great. So, when we go through this, the stuff that we do on the front side, it's a little touchy-feely sometimes, and we're going to get in close and really see what's happening in your practice. I really need to understand what's happening in your life and where does this put you in your transition plan for your life. So it's a little more work on the front side. We coach you all the way through it, but we don't want any surprises. We're not going to get any surprises. I don't want any surprises from the buyers, and I certainly don't want any surprises from the doctors.
Right.
When they're like, oh, by the way, I don't even own this practice, or oh, by the way, like I'm moving to Cuba tomorrow, or whatever it is, right? Like that never happens.
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of buyers out there, but not every buyer is going to be a good fit for you, right? And when I say you, meaning the client. And so from our perspective, if your pain point is HR or let's do HR and recruiting, then there are buyers out there that don't have an HR infrastructure or they don't have that pipeline. That doesn't mean that's a bad group. That's just not what they have yet. So if you are entering this relationship and that is your primary solvable thing that we're needing to come to, that we need to make sure, which we do, hey, what buyer groups are going to be able to solve for your thing, whatever that thing might be. So I think that's an important factor too. And when we if I circle back to where we started here, which is you should always consider it. That's the education that you deserve to have when you're making this decision and that you should expect from the process that you enter into if you determine it's the right thing to do, because there's a lot of variables to solve for, and you can't solve for every single one of them, but we have to be able to solve for the ones that matter to you and get you the best financial impact and solution for the problem that we're solving for.
I love that, and it comes down to backtrack into how you're ready to do this. You have to be able to answer all these questions. If you don't know what their HR situation looks like and it matters to you, you're not ready. If you don't know how your days are managed after you transact, you're not ready. If you don't know all of this stuff, boy, you're not ready. And especially if it's important to you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know what happens to their practices post-transaction, do they grow, do they die, whatever, you're not ready. You need to know all of these things. Just because an offer looks nice and it's 50% more than your associate was going to buy your practice for, that doesn't mean they're going to solve all your problems. What are we solving for? And and these are partnerships, so it's not just as easy as taking the highest number. One, the number on the top of the page may be a real number, it may not be. There's all these different qualifiers.
A whole podcast episode about this.
There's a whole episode just about what enterprise value is. But I kind of liken it to a situation where most people have either bought or sold a house. And when you're selling your house, if you're selling your house in a neighborhood and you're moving to another state, you're just going to take the highest bidder and you don't really care what happens. Versus, what if you were selling your house and on one side of you was your brother and the other side was your parents? Okay, you're thinking about a couple different things now, because whoever I sell this house to, I'm going to have to deal with a little bit, and so are my family members. And if this is a bad situation, then I'm going to be hearing about it. It's kind of a weird comparison, but it likens to a lot of it. I'm either selling it for the top dollar, getting out like a regular corporate transaction. I'm getting bought out completely, highest bidder. See you later. Have a nice life. But now, my staff is still involved. My patients are still involved. My brother and my parents are still involved. My patients and staff are still involved. It really matters who that partner is, not just selfishly. I mean, most of our practices, the staff built that practice either with them, for them, or on behalf of them or something. And we want to make sure all those people are taken care of, and the patients. I mean, this is all about the patients and patient care. And is somebody going to change the way you deal with your patients? I don't know. If you don't know that, You better figure it out.
Well, I think that's a great place to stop. We've clearly covered a lot today, and I think if anyone's garnered anything from this episode, hopefully it's that you've got to learn what you're solving for. You have to be able to understand what your why is, and that will help lead you to if it's the right time to do this. And we can't answer that question for you, but we can clearly help you get there, right?
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for joining us today. We have a lot more topics to cover, lots of education in this space that we'll get to over the coming episodes. But until then, I'm Christy, and this is Brett, and we're with 7 Pillars.
Thanks for listening to The Dental Deal, a podcast for dental professionals considering a DSO partnership. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to join us for our upcoming episodes. Until then, keep smiling.